July was the worst month in the history of GTA real estate market. Where did the buyers go? Hi everyone, Yinan here. So after two rate cuts, we have seen the market getting worse from even earlier this year. Why? We want to use data and analytics to take a look at the market trend, what's happening today, and where the market is headed. So let's take a look at the screen. This report, as you can see, the Market Watch report is a report published by TREB every month to try to tell us what's going on in the market. It tells us the number of sales and average price and number of new listings. And we want to make use of these data, better visualize it to share with you what's going on in the market. So today we want to look at the entire market as a whole, including all the cities and all the different property types. And in future videos, we will look at more specific property types. We'll zoom into more specific regions. So stay tuned, subscribe to our channel for more real estate analytics content. Okay, so on the screen, these are basically the same number as you saw in the report. We just line them up and graph them better. So as you can see, July average price was 1.1 million and 6,000. Okay, the green line is the latest number, and the other lines are the past 2 years of 12 months average price. Okay, and this includes all the property types. And as you can see, the yellow line was 2022, okay, 2 years ago, and it had a very high peak. And that peak was basically right before the rate hikes started. That was February and March 2022. Okay, as you can see, the average price back then for the entire GTA was $1.33 million. Everything, like detached condos, everything, 1.3. That's a very expensive number. Right now, the average price dropped down to 1.1. So as you can see, that's like a almost $250,000 drop, right, in average price. And the price actually in that same year, 2022, it actually went down from 1.335 to 1.075. Okay, that's more than $250,000 drop. And the price sort of stayed flat for the remainder of the 2022. And then it fluctuated last year. The red line was 2023. Last year, the price shot up in the beginning of the year, as you can see, from the 1.04 to 1.2. The reason was that everybody at the beginning of last year expected, okay, rate cuts were done, no more rate cuts, and the market should start getting better. So the market was already pricing in no rate cuts in the future. So buyers were getting optimistic, the market was going up. Up until June last year, that's when the surprise rate hike came in. And that's when everybody was freaking out because Canada was not supposed to have more rate hikes. And because the US, Fed actually kept increasing their rates at the beginning of last year, but Canada was staying put. After the Fed went up twice or even 3 times, Bank of Canada was like, no, we cannot stay put anymore. We want to keep up with the Fed, right? So Canada actually started raising rates again for twice in a row in the middle of last year. And that's why you saw this big drop last year in price from the June 1.18 to the end of the year, sort of like back down to 1.08, right? $100,000 drop just for the second half of last year. And this year, 2024, as you can see, at the beginning of the year, people were getting hopeful again. There was a strong spring market in January and February and part of March this year. Prices were going up again because people were pricing in rate cuts. Okay, people were thinking March we should have our first rate cut already this year. Then it didn't happen. In April and May, we were wondering when is the rate cut going to happen? Even the financial market was pricing in only about 50% chance for June rate cut when we were in April and May this year. That's why you see the market started to slow down in April and May. And then when June finally happened, June 5th, the first rate cut in Canada happened. That's when a lot of the sellers actually start putting their real estate properties on the market. They were like, finally, we waited this long, finally a rate cut, market should get better, let's put our house on sale. So you'll see, we have a lot of new listings in June, and but buyers did not start to action because buyers were waiting to see what happens after the rate cut. And we saw, in June was very quiet. I was actually busier in May, and because some buyers were anticipating a better market after a potential rate drop, so they actioned in May. In June, after the rate cut, buyers saw, hey, there's no bidding war in June, then why would I buy now? I'll wait for a bit more rate cuts so I can lock in a better mortgage rate. And they were right. You know, if you bought in earlier June, your mortgage rates were probably around 5%, 5.2, 5.3. But now today, I was looking at new mortgage rates at like 4.6, 4.7. People are actually getting a better rate today after the two rate drops. So that's why we saw like a slow June and July market. And you can see the average price in July, the 1.107. This is actually a drop, right, from June. And well, a lot of it's seasonality because usually in the summer, as you can see, all 3 years, July average price came down. But also we saw like a slow July market was sort of anticipated because a lot of sellers came on the market and buyers were not in a rush. So why did I say it's the slowest July in the history of GTA real estate market? Because before we take a look at buyers and sellers and try to figure out who to blame, let's take a look at the end result, okay, of the current market action. The end result is that if you look at the screen, the active listings is at an all-time high of 23,876. So let's call that 24,000 active listings. That is a huge number. We have not seen this level of active listing before, ever. Last year in 2023, the second half of last year, market was extremely slow. And even then, we only saw a 19,000 active listing number. So right now, our 24,000, this is like historically high. And you may wonder, okay, is it just the last 3 years? Like, did we ever have higher active listings? No. Let's take a look at even before. You know how we had a slow market in 2018, 2019? We even went through COVID. There was a lot of condos came on the market. So let's look at all those years, ever since 2016. This is the chart that has all of those years active listing numbers. And you can see none of those years had anything that's even close to 24,000 level. Most of the years, the active listings were kept under the 20,000 level, okay? Even like, 2018, 2019, as you can see, the orange line was 2018, right? That's the second highest level of active listings. And even back then, it was only like 20,000. So ever since this year, ever since May, we have been seeing record number of active listings. And this is when we stopped having any sort of historical reference to help us understand, hey, what's going to happen to our real estate market, because we have never seen this level of active listings before. And you may wonder, is this all because of condos? In the next video, we will show you, we'll break it down by property types and you'll see, okay? So don't forget to subscribe. So as a result of the high number of active listings, we'll see the months of inventory level will actually at a historically high as well. So right now, as you can see, Toronto, well, GTA as a whole, our active listing divided by number of sales is the months of inventory, right? We're at 4.4. This is historically high, okay? Even at the end of last year, even though we had fewer active listings, right? And we had less buyers back then, the months of inventory was still even lower than today. This is a number that's like the higher, the slower the market, okay? The smaller this number, the faster, the more towards seller's market. Generally, 3 or under is a seller's market. As you can see, in Greater Toronto, we generally have been lucky. We have generally had a seller's market most of the time. Okay, that's why we're so used to our houses sell for above asking price. We have multiple offers and bidding wars because generally we have been spoiled with a seller's market. This is kind of one of the first times in history we are in a balanced or even buyer's market zone. And a lot of times it's a buyer's market without buyers. We see a lot of listings, we have like 2 showings in 1 month, which is very, very slow. And we have not seen this level of slowness in our market in sort of the recent 10, 15 years of history in our market. So this is why a lot of the sellers are very confused. Like, what's happening with our market and why can we not find a buyer for our properties? In August, today is August 9th, we have actually seen a bit more movement. We're starting to see a bit more showings. So that's a good sign, right? But from the data perspective, we're still looking at very high inventories, very, very few buyers and a lot of sellers. So speaking of fewer buyers, you may wonder how few is few, okay? So if we take a look at the same chart, but for number of sales, like actual number of transactions, you will see our current level is right here, okay? It's one of the lowest in the history of our real estate market. Most Julys, we actually have about 7,000 to 10,000 transactions. Okay, this past July, we only had 5,300. Okay, this green line you can see is one of the lowest. However, even though it's one of the lowest, it's actually not the lowest. This is very important. Okay, we take a look at this chart. If we actually get rid of all these other years, we just look at the past 3 years, 2024, 23, and 22. And you will see that buyers is not the one to be blamed for this market. Okay, we still actually have, between the last 3 years, we have the highest number of buyers transacting in July compared to the last 2 years. Last year, we had 5,250 transactions in July. 2 years ago, we had 4,900 buyers made a transaction. For this past July, we had 5,391 buyers. We actually had the most number of buyers. So that means we're still transacting, okay? We still have buyers looking for properties. We probably have the same group of like end users and actually buying properties, okay? We still have these buyers. We're low compared to historical levels, but in the recent 2 years, we're not the lowest, okay? So that means the current high level of inventory, we have the sellers to blame, okay? It's not the buyer's problem, it's the sellers, because we had much lower inventory level in the past 2 years. As you can see, past 2 years, inventory level was 15,000. We have 24,000 this year. Why? Take a look at this. This is the number of new listings. Sellers are putting properties on the market at a record speed, okay? Especially in the past 2 months. Ever since the rate drop started, you can see in June, this 18,000 new listings is historically high June, okay? And this 16,300 new listings is a historically high comparing to all the Julys or even in general, right? You can see there's a lot of sellers, because of the rate cut, are putting their properties on the market. And even earlier this year, okay, we were still in a reasonable sort of level. And comparing to like even 2 years ago, there were even more sellers 2 years ago. But ever since the rate cut happened, we actually have seen a record number of sellers putting their properties on the market. And that's what's causing the current high level of inventory. And because buyers are still sort of holding off, and because buyers have this herd mentality, okay, most buyers, they're going to jump in the market when they see others are starting to move. But sellers usually have your own reasons to put the properties on the market. Sellers usually don't have this herd mentality, right? When you're selling a property, it's either because, you know, your tenant moved out, your mortgage is renewing, and or you have a change in a job or family situation, like you have to sell. You don't want to carry the property vacant until like a better market. The carry cost is very high. Especially Toronto, we now have the new vacancy home tax, right? So people don't want to carry a vacant home. So sellers, I mean, some of them are waiting for the rate cut to put the property on the market, but that's why we're seeing a lot of sellers. But generally, sellers will remain fairly high for the foreseeable future, at least this year. And whether the buyers will be moving will depend on what everybody else is doing, okay? Buyers are observing to see when other buyers were jumping the market, because nobody wants to catch a knife in the middle of a fall, right? Everybody wants to like go to the bottom. So that's why they're watching the market closely. So we are going to see a tough market in general. And if we take a look at all the years, right? If we take a look at just the buyers and sellers, the ratio between them, right? Even the sellers, we know they're at a historically high. Even if we compare like to all the historical levels, right now 16,000 is still one of the highest, right? The only time that sellers were more in July was in 2020. Remember when COVID happened, everybody was listing their condos. That's the only time we had more sellers. But right now, we have more sellers than every other year. Generally, July is a slow time to list their properties, but right now, everybody's putting them on the market. So if we take a look at the final number, which is the sales to new listing ratio, this is kind of a ratio between buyers and sellers, right? Forget about inventories, just number of sellers against number of buyers on the market. You can see right now we have a historically low level of sales to new listing ratio at 0.33. Okay, this is the lowest ever, right? So we have not seen this low of a sales to new listing ratio in the recent history, except the end of last year. So that's why we think right now we are in a very challenging market, and hopefully with the upcoming rate cuts in September, it's going to start spurring the market a bit more, right? Add a bit more juice to the market. And personally, I do think there's a break-even point in the buyer's mindset of eventually how many rate cuts does it take for buyers to start actioning. And I will do a calculation in one of the future videos to show you how many rate cuts does it take for the buyer to start action. Okay, so stay tuned, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.